Welcome to EJB Talks, Rutgers Bloustein School experts in policy, planning, and health, where we talk with our faculty and staff experts, as well as students, about how the fields of public policy, urban planning, public health, health administration, and public and urban informatics affect your lives. Welcome to our second season of EJB Talks. We're thrilled to be back with you. I'm Stuart Shapiro, the Associate Dean of Faculty at the Bloustein School, and the purpose of this podcast is to talk with my colleagues and our alumni about policy planning and health and how these issues affect people in New Jersey, the United States, and the world. We're going to start this season by talking with some of our newest faculty members at the Bloustein School. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Professor Patti O'Brien-Richardson, who joined us last year and teaches undergraduates leadership and helps them through their internships. Professor Richardson, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited. It's great to be with you.
Wonderful. Let's start by talking about your research and your advocacy. You've done a lot of work on the issue of hair discrimination. How did you get interested in Black individuals being discriminated against because of how they wear their hair?
Well, just like everything else we're seeing nationally, this has been an issue for decades, really. It's been an issue for a very long time. But I think because of technology, because of social media, we're now able to actually see, someone in one part of the country or even in one part of the world is able to see what's happening. People that experience hair discrimination are able to write about it in their blogs or on YouTube in their vlogs, and many articles have been published about it. So it's really hard to not realize that it's happening. But my journey really began talking to youth, just as an educator, and just speaking with mostly high school students at the time. One of the things that I found in talking to them in my work as a health educator was I noticed that some girls were not participating in physical education. They weren't being physically active, and so they would rather sit on the bleachers instead of participate. Now, this was in high school at the time. I was a high school educator, and when I asked them about it, they said they didn't want to mess up their hair. They really didn't want to destroy their hairstyle at the time. And so when I started to talk to them and sort of create not necessarily a serious focus group, but just a group of girls talking after class, one of the things I found was that they really felt this pressure, this societal pressure to have their hair neat, straight, and also to assimilate to the working conditions and what they felt was the standard of working professionals that are women that look like them. And so I realized that even at a very young age, like perhaps even 8, 9, 10, early teen years, you have brown and Black girls that are feeling this pressure to have their hair straight or definitely neat, and really as a way of getting a job and getting entrance into the workplace. And the more I asked about it, that's what I heard from them, that they felt from hearing their mothers, aunties, older siblings say, if you when you graduate, when you apply for a job or when you apply for an internship, you have to make sure that your hair has to be a certain way. And so it started there. And then the more I spoke to young adults and young women, and then women of all ages, it really became an area of focus for me.
So you're clearly not the only one who kind of picked up on this. It's become an issue nationwide, and we're seeing states pass legislation to try and deal with it. Can you, or to combat it, I should say, can you talk a little bit about state legislation, especially here in New Jersey, and what kind of laws are being put in place to combat hair discrimination?
Yeah, it's very exciting. I'm very proud to be from New Jersey. At least now, currently, I'm originally from New York, but I'm just equally proud to be from New
Just
Jersey
like
because
me,
New Yorkers from I'm from
transplanted New
Brooklyn.
Yorkers who are
Yes,
slowly overcoming their biases and acclimating to New Jersey.
slowly. So, in 2019, we started off with really. a force, I would say, more of a force of recognizing that this is an issue. We really have to address this on a large scale. And California became the first state to enact legislation banning hair discrimination by passing the Crown Act in July 3rd, 2019. And then shortly after that, New York followed, and that was a huge event in New York City because it also included schools, and I was very excited about that. Being an educator, it also included that young people, older people, men, women, all genders now have protection under the law. And then at the end of the year, New Jersey became state number three. And so there are now seven states, including Washington, Colorado, Virginia, and Maryland. And it's very exciting. But we still have several that have filed to have a Crown Act, which really represents a protection for the discrimination of hair. And Crown stands for to creating a respectful and open workplace for natural hair. And so it's very exciting for New Jersey. And so on December 19th, at the end of last year, our governor, Phil Murphy, signed the Crown Act. And so now, if anyone, students, youth, any age, any gender, if they feel or they have been discriminated against because of their hair, which that would include braids, locks, twists, natural hairstyles, because well, natural hairstyles really meaning that it's been unprocessed and there is no chemicals involved to make it straight. So just the way black hair naturally comes out. And so there has been cases of this hair discrimination, but now in New Jersey and in these several states, there can be protection. And so this is something that I believe this type of policy, this is something that employers, even businesses, really need to be aware that they have to really focus and be able to monitor these types of policy because this could affect their business. And so there are fines that are involved now in New Jersey, especially in this climate that we have right now with racial tensions nationwide and even globally. Um, you know, I would say that it's very important for businesses and organizations to really pay close attention to their own policies and practices, particularly in New Jersey, and just to really make sure that they're revising their documents, their guiding documents, their HR policies. There's been an increase in managers being properly trained in New Jersey. There are several initiatives to have diversity training and inclusive training for employers as well as staff and management. So this is very important, and I think it really leads to the whole idea of creating an inclusive environment for everyone.
So it's only been obviously 9 months or so since New Jersey passed it. It's a little more time since California and New York City. Have you noticed any changes? Do you think that awareness is increasing as a result of these statutes?
That's a great question because, equally as relevant in the last 9 months, we've had coronavirus.
Right.
And so we've been home, which really, I don't know what it's like for you, but I've been very comfortable in terms of what I wear at times, how my hair
I
looks.
have no comment on that.
So I think it's really hard to tell. I think this type of assessment and evaluation would really be better assessed once the world opens, quote unquote, and we're able to go back into the workforce and really be able to see what's acceptable and what is not. And we'll be able to judge really based on the number of files and complaints that have been filed, and those types of things. Even with schools now, everyone is really they have options. There's hybrid learning. There's quite a few classes online. Many communities are remote. So it's in terms of what students wear, there are different levels of enforcement. I have read, though, of students really being warned about uniforms in certain school districts. And so I'm beginning to see maybe it will lead there, but I think we really won't be able to tell until the world opens up and the workforce is fully engaged working off site in the communities, in those organizations and companies. And then we'll be able to really know.
I tend to agree with that. I do wonder, though, you brought up the Zoom example. Like my kids, for example, have to keep their cameras on for their classes, for their high school and middle school classes. They're not allowed to turn their camera off. I mean, that means you got to keep up certain appearances
Hmm.
if you're going to do that, and that could we could still see some of these discriminatory acts even remotely, even though people aren't in person.
It's true, and I think they're starting off with the clothing and uniforms, and that's really how it began with young people, at least
Hmm.
students. It began with using the hair policy as an extension of the school uniform, and we saw that with several students across the country, some even making its way on national talk shows and to the Oscars and Grammys, and it became a very highlighted area. So I think we'll just have to wait and see what it looks like. But I think for now, with everyone moving to this virtual format, we'll just have to wait it out and see. But at the same time, I think organizations and companies really need to use this time to instill diversity training, training on inclusion, and building a welcoming, belonging space for all individuals because there are fines that are attached and we are living in a litigious environment and we're seeing quite a bit of racial tension across the globe. So I think that this is an opportunity while we are remote for organizations to use this time in preparation when the world does open up and employment is now on site again.
So you mentioned COVID as something that has affected the implementation of this statute, and like you said, it gives employers time. The other major development, obviously, over the past year was the murder of George Floyd and the ensuing protests, and as you said, the increasing racial tension. How do you think that affects issues like hair discrimination? Does it push them aside a bit? Does it give it an opportunity to look at them more closely? What's your perspective on that?
Well, there is a strong connection between the way we do our hair and what's happening with George Floyd and many other police involved shootings across the country. And the reason is because hair is a part of who we are, it is a characteristic of who we are. And it can definitely reflect our gender, sex, identity for sure, and even our national origin, our race and our ethnicity, the country we're from. And so, because this type of discrimination is rooted in race and racism and discrimination, it's completely connected to what's happening across the world where we see discrimination and violence and structural violence specifically and systemic violence towards people of color, but specifically black people. And so I think with what happened with George Floyd and many others before him and since then, sadly, is we do see this um, powerful moment where all of us we were able to watch this man die before our eyes. And so that is something that no one will forget. But I think that because it goes back to this concept of blackness and what that means in America, from the history of America, it's completely connected. And that's why hair discrimination is discrimination because it's rooted in racism. And so I think that's an important point to connect it to.
Great. Before I switch gears, is there anything else you want to say about your work on hair discrimination?
Well, just that I think I'm excited to be a part of it. I was able to use the literature, the work that I've published to help support the passing of the bill in Colorado. I'm very happy that I've been reached out to by the policymakers to see if I'd be interested in allowing my work to be used to support their argument for pushing for this legislation. So I think it's important that policy really becomes people oriented again. And so I'm excited to be a part of that movement. It's just the beginning and I think there's more to come.
Great. All right, let me finish up by asking you one or two questions on your teaching role. Um, The pandemic has obviously affected the job market. I just ran into one of my best former students on Friday who's still looking for a job. I have to imagine it's affected the internship market as well. How are students doing in finding internships? Are they out there? And what has the dynamic become?
hmm I have to say, I am so proud of our students. I'm so proud. I'm sure I can say that for all of us at Bloustein, but and even just in general, the class of 2020 and the class of 2021 that we're teaching now, they are on fire. They are so resilient. I mean, they are going to be change makers, absolutely, because they've come through the fire. They've come through a very challenging time, and many of them have experienced coronavirus themselves. I know
Yeah.
personally, one of my students, she was literally had the tubes to her nose on a ventilator and allowing air to just support her breathing. And she was giving her presentation. From
Oh my
there, she was able
goodness.
to record it and then she sent it. So, of course, she definitely got an A. But I guess,
I would hope
the,
so.
but I think, and also I think it's important to note that several of our students are already essential workers. They are EMTs. Several of them are educators. They're teaching day school, daycare, which young children are there and they're right in front. They're right on the front line. And so I'm just so proud of our Bloustein students. And I think because of that, they are a different breed to me. Like they are ferocious, they are intense, they are determined. They have this determination that's very inspiring. And I have to say, even challenging for me. I'm inspired by it. So I have seen them really come in with some incredible creative ideas. They've been able to, despite the challenges that they're facing, they have been able to capitalize on the virtual format and creating opportunities for themselves and finding internships with a virtual remote format. So I'm super proud of them. I have not experienced many students with a challenge, to be quite honest. And I think it's
No,
just their
that's great.
generation. I think that, it's Gen Zs and they are online. If you want to get something done, just give it to someone in that age range in terms of anything technologic. And so they will just get it done and get it done quicker. And so they have been able to leverage that knowledge to secure opportunities that I'm just always amazed. In fact, last week, it's what are we in the second week of school? I had a student tell me that she's already secured her internship for the spring, for professional practice in the
Wow.
spring. So they're hungry. They're determined. I think being a part of coronavirus, seeing their family members pass away, seeing their uncles and aunties sick, siblings, I think that it's made them see how much more determined they have to be and competitive. And so I think also another part of that is that many employers are shifting their internship programs to a virtual format. And so really I think those that that will be at a disadvantage are those that are not able to quickly take advantage of that shift. So I think that our students are able to because of what they know, what we're teaching them in terms of the skills we're teaching them in the leadership program and how to look attractive on LinkedIn and how to prepare their resume and how to even interview now remotely, which is totally different than even a year ago. So I think it's caused us as educators at Bloustein to really re-examine what the job market needs, what organizations and companies and employers require. And so we've had to have some meetings ourselves and just to learn best practices, change up our curriculum, and really help our students so that when they leave Blaustein, they're not just equipped, but they're really ready to shine.
That's great. That's very heartening. We are also, of course, helped by the fact that so many of our students have health-related interests, and that
hmm
has been a very booming market for unfortunate reasons.
hmm
Patti, thank you very much for coming on today. Really a great conversation. Um, I also like to give a big thank you to Amy Cobb and Karen Olson, our production team. We'll be back next week with another interview with another of our new faculty members here at the Bloustein School. Till then, stay safe.